This is Ektar 100. Last fall, I shot my first roll of this while I was on a trip out in Oregon. Now, I've heard that this is a great landscape photography film stock, but I never really shot it for myself personally. Looking back at some of the shots that I captured with this film in Oregon, realizing it might be some of the most vibrant landscape photos I've ever shot on film. Now, up to this point, I've had quite a bit of experience using the Portras, the Portra 400, Portra 160, but I had just not gotten to the Ektar 100 yet. I was actually saving this roll specifically for this trip to Oregon. I wanted something that was a really cool setting to try and shoot Ektar for the first time. And I knew the Oregon in the fall would be really cool with the autumn colors, the Pacific Northwest greens that you get out there. When I was taking my trip, I was around the Portland area, and Portland has quite a few really cool waterfalls. And that's where I ended up going to take the first roll of Ektar. And I took almost the entire roll. Not only did I take Ektar 100, I also took a Portra 400 with me. In a little bit, I'm going to show the difference between the images I got with the Ektar and the Portra. So the Ektar is known for having a little bit more contrast, a little bit more punchy colors than Portra. So we're going to take a look to see if that's actually the case or not. And the falls that I decided to use the Ektar in is one of the most famous waterfalls in Oregon, Multnomah Falls. If you've ever seen photographs or videos of any of the Oregon waterfalls, you most likely know this one as the one with the bridge. There's thousands of photos of this specific waterfall. But I decided, let's give it a shot. Let's go there, try to take some Ektar photos. Now, one of the first photos I want to talk about from this Ektar roll is probably one of my favorites from the entire roll. Funny enough, it is actually two photographers. One is teaching another one how to do photography, photographing the waterfalls themselves. So it's kind of a little bit of an inception. I'm photographing the falls, but they're also in the foreground, which gives a little bit more depth and a little bit of a story in this photo. The first thing I want to point out in this photo is how contrasty and how saturated the colors are in this photo. This film is already living up to the characteristics that people talk about of this film stock. You know, the greens are coming through really vibrantly, the yellows are too, but the blacks and the shadows are also very deep, rich color. So this next photo, I was actually up towards the bridge on the waterfall. And I started to hike up, and I got probably 3/4 of the way up the mountain, and it got very windy, so I ended up turning back. And on my way back down, I was looking through the valley after the waterfall towards the Columbia River. And I saw the bend around the corner, and it was just lined with some beautifully yellow trees. So I ended up taking a shot here, and this turned into one of my favorite photos from this roll as well, because the colors that are just coming through from this film, when it's a completely overcast day, you know, you expect a little bit more of a dull color, lower contrast, but man, did this film really create some beautiful colors in an overall overcast day. Now this next image was actually when I was leaving the falls. I was driving through the road, and you go through a bunch of these trees, basically a tunnel of trees. I looked back in my rearview mirror and I saw the sun coming through this tunnel of trees, and I had to stop. So I ended up pulling over, getting out and taking a photo. And I think this one really emphasizes the contrast that you can get from Ektar and the colors. The yellows, the greens, the darkness of the shadows. It is just a very unique film stock that so far I've really enjoyed using. think this is a perfect time to start comparing a little bit to Portra. I have a very similar photo that I took the previous day on Portra. It's very similar scene, very overcast, and it's through another tunnel of trees. But you can start seeing the difference in Ektar and Portra. The Ektar produces a little bit more contrast, punchy colors, where the Portra gives a little bit more of a pastel and less contrast. And I think both of these images shown together really emphasizes the difference in Portra and Ektar. These two photos are two photos of the waterfalls that I visited, one on Ektar, one on Portra. And you can see the difference in the yellows and the greens in this one as well. Even the blues a little bit and the mists of the waterfall have a little bit different feel between the two film stocks. So the last two images I'm comparing are both overlooking the Columbia River. They have a little bit different lighting scenario, a little bit different time of day. One's more towards sunset than the other, but they still show that difference in the greens and the reds, the yellows. In the Ektar, the reds and yellows are a lot more punchy. The greens are a little bit deeper in color than the Portra. Even the blue and the sky and the water have a little bit more contrast in color and saturation in them. For a first roll of a film, I was pleasantly surprised with a lot of the image that I got out of this roll. So here are some images out of that roll that I really enjoy, and for it being the first time using this film stock, I'm really happy with a lot of these photos and how they turned out. So what are my final thoughts on Ektar 100? Well, I really enjoyed using this film. The contrast that you get, the saturation and the colors you get, they really pop off in the images. With Ektar being a 100 ISO film, it's not as versatile as the Portra 400. You can't use it in a lot of scenarios that Portra would be easier for. A lot of the time when you're using Ektar, you might need a tripod to properly get the photos that you need to get, because it's a lot less sensitive of a film than, say, the Portra 400. So I still really like Portra as an all-around, everyday film stock. But Ektar 100 is a great film stock when it's a very bright day, when you're doing landscape. The colors that it is producing are absolutely unbelievable. This is one of those film stocks that I will keep in my bag at all times in case I ever need it. It will not be my main film stock that I use, but when I go out to places, say like Wyoming, here in the next couple of months, I'm taking some rolls of film of this. I expect this film to produce some amazing photos out in Wyoming, in Yellowstone, the Grand Tetons. I can only imagine what sunsets look like on this, or sunrises right off the tops of the mountains. I'm very excited to use this out west coming up. But that was my first experience using Ektar 100. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you guys were able to see the differences between Portra and Ektar. Maybe help a little bit understand what Ektar is good for, what scenarios it excels in. I know I'll continue to use Ektar in my future landscape stuff. I will probably always have 1 or 2 rolls of Ektar somewhere in my house, just in case. It's a really good film stock to use. I'm excited to continue using it, and I look forward to seeing what other photos I get from it. I actually have a video coming up on my first roll of Cinestill 800. So keep an eye out for that, but hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned some stuff. So thanks guys, Appreciate you. On to the next one. We'll see you later.